we've seen everything with Boston college football this season. Every way you can think of losing, BC has done it. And on Saturday, they ended off their 2022 season with an absolute stinker by blowing an 11-point lead and getting blown out by Syracuse in the fourth quarter. We're going to talk with Mitch today about this game, what the overall feeling of the at the end of the season and everything else we've learned about Boston college football under Jeff Hafley. We'll get all into that and basketball in our final segment on today's Locked On BC.
You are Locked On Boston College, your daily podcast on the Boston College Eagles, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Locked On BC. This is AJ Black. Happy Monday to all of you listening on the podcast, and happy Sunday to all of you who are listening live. Now, hope you all had a nice Thanksgiving. I certainly did, but we're here to talk about Saturday's game. A very, very frustrating affair by the Boston College Eagles to end their season. They lose 32-23 to the Syracuse Orange. And, this was a game they had to win. They had to win. They had the opportunity to win. And just like everything else this season, it just went completely off the rails as they lose, blowing a big 17-6 lead. And with me to talk about this mess is Mitch Wolf. Mitch, happy belated Thanksgiving.
Happy belated Thanksgiving to you as well. We're finally at the end of it, thank God. And we can just finally close the page or close the cover on this abysmal season.
And if you're watching on YouTube, you can see I have a graphic up calling this the season finale stinker. And I hate putting a picture of Zay Flowers up there because he should not be the person representing the term stinker, but it was just the picture I found. That's the one I was going to go with. But this was a game that BC jumped out right out of the bat. They had the block punt. They put up 10 points within, the first, 5-6 minutes of the game, and they looked completely in control. They were more physical than Syracuse, and they never, just like some of these other games under Hafley, they never put the, they never had that coup de grace, the death blow to Syracuse. They let them kind of hang around, and then boom, second half, it was like the Syracuse that we were expecting to see, as Sean Tucker runs for 2 touchdowns and their wide receiver, I'm totally blanking on his name, Ogden or whatever his name is.
Oronde Gadsden.
Oronde Gadsden, thank you. Couldn't think of his name. Torches BC, and they lose. Mitch, I want your thoughts. What was your reaction to this game?
I mean, you say they didn't really deal the death blow, and I kind of thought that Garwo touchdown to put them up 17-6. I thought that might have been it. It was early in the fourth, but I was like, man, Syracuse isn't doing anything. Defense is playing well. Like, they might be able to grind this one out. And then Syracuse reeled off 4 touchdowns in the final 10 minutes of the game, and it was over before we even knew it, going the other way. Yeah, I mean, I said BC was going to win this game. I was feeling good about that at that point, and then they just completely broke down. And I haven't gotten a chance to watch the whole game back yet, so I can't exactly say why, but I mean, the defense just completely broke down, and they were bending, not breaking for most of the game, which was good. But they, even I'm not going to say like, oh, the one penalty flipped the whole thing, but that roughing the passer on Donovan Ezaraku, who had a very good game on the field, in between the whistles, between plays, and maybe after the game, not so much, but that roughing the passer penalty, which you could argue about, but regardless, it's hitting quarterback late, so that's going to happen. That was the turning point of the game when Syracuse, that's when they started reeling off all those scores, just hitting big play after big play. And NBC just couldn't keep up with them at the end.
Yeah. And I feel like it'd be hypocritical for me to complain about penalty calls when just 2 weeks ago we were calling out the NC State writers for doing the exact same thing. At the end of the day, that's I think it's just the way football is now, right? With the roughing the passer calls. To me, it looked bang bang, but literally they give the benefit of the doubt to the quarterback every single time, and it's a hard job for these defensive ends to make those plays. And You can call. I saw people calling it stupid. Stupid. I mean, I don't know what he's supposed to do there. I mean,
I don't agree with that. I mean, I think that this happens in football a lot. I mean, I think you could compare it to the Cole Batson penalty against NC State, where he couldn't pull off trying to tackle a MJ Morris who was kind of sliding, kind of juking. So that's just going to happen. And I know Hafley has kind of talked about certain penalties, like he obviously doesn't want like procedural penalties, minimize holding penalties, but sometimes it's those like late hit penalties. He's going to say like, hey, listen, you're playing hard. We'll eat that, because sometimes it gets called, sometimes it doesn't. So, and even if you say like, okay, Syracuse scored after that touchdown to get it 17-12, BC still had plenty of opportunities after that to on defense get a stop, and then on offense, put up some points that mattered. They obviously scored the final touchdown, but the only thing it affected was the spread, which for me was good, but it did not affect the outcome of the game, obviously.
Now, there's a lot of negativity going around in the program. Obviously, when you finish a 3-9 season, there absolutely should be. When you look at this loss, what is the one thing you mentioned? The defense. If you were just to ballpark it right now, Mitch, what would you point to being the biggest reason the defense fell apart, or the reason this team lost this game?
So I'm not trying to blame injuries, but I think at the end of this, by this point in the season, you've got I don't think Josh DeBerry played at all. Elijah Jones didn't play at all. So they were down to at one point Isaiah Ferris, who I think is a walk-on. He might be a scholarship.
No, he's scholarship. He was
okay, all right, he's a scholarship player, but was
yep.
Bottom of the recruiting class, hasn't played all season, and suddenly you get thrown into this key situation, and even in the beginning of the game, like you saw like the two premier guys, Jones and DeBerry, not playing, so they're down a bunch of guys. Amari Jackson and CJ Burton are out there, but I think that they're probably still nursing injuries. Jalen Williams had a really bad game. He got picked on a ton, and because you're down those guys, you have to shift your defense to more of a zone defense, because you're like, okay, these guys don't have the speed to stick with Syracuse's receivers in man, and then that allowed Garrett Shrader to kind of pick BC apart in zone. So gotcha. That was, I think, and then towards the end of the game, you saw him, hit some deep shots because of that. So I think that would be the primary reason why.
So you're making excuses for Hafley?
Yeah, of course.
No, but in honesty too, though, you mentioned two defensive quarterbacks. They were also down Cole Batson too.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, down another safety as well. You saw Steve Flubersher get in there. So I mean, I think this is a bit of a concerning trend. Last year, you had BC with a similar issue on defense, where you had a lot of, and it was also sickness, but you had a lot of guys missing the last two games with injuries. So I am a little concerned about how this team deals with the attrition of a college football season. Maybe as we get further away from, hopefully they won't get the flu a third year in a row next year, but that is something that I think they do need to address moving forward, because it's been, and I'm not even talking about like Jerkovic, like that's just, you're a physical quarterback, you're going to get hurt sometimes, but like the general, like lots of injuries at a lot of different position groups that are piling up at the end of the season. And that's an issue that really affects BC's ability to win games down the stretch.
Yeah. And I think that's an issue. And I don't know if that's a strength and conditioning issue, a depth issue. I mean, it seems like to me, BC's had more issues with injuries than other teams. Like when you hear about another team, when they bring it up in a game, they're like, yeah, they're missing two big guys on their defense. It's like, oh, that's cool, because BC's missing like half of their positional group at like in the secondary,
Yeah, exactly.
So I'm not sure what that is, and I'm not sure what the answer, and that's something Hafley's going to have to take a big hard look at, this off season. Is like, is this something that I can change here, through X, Y, and Z? Like, is it a conditioning thing? Is it something that I need to make some changes? I'm not sure what that is, but he's gonna, this is going on. He's going to be going on to year 4 next year. He's going to have to start making some changes in order to keep his job, because, now he is well below 500 as a head coach at Boston College, and his leash is starting to get a lot shorter. Mm-hmm. And in our second segment, in our second segment, I want to talk to Mitch about the coaching staff in general. Look at a little bit about this game and where he thinks, the offense looked, and some other things that went along with that. But before we do that, let's look at upside. Upside is they have inflation has us all thinking about different ways to cut back, whether it's driving less, dining out less, or buying less from the grocery store. We can all agree there's nothing fun about less. That's why I started using Upside. Upside is an incredible app for anyone who buys gas, groceries, or dines out. With Upside, I don't have to cut back because I get cash back on every purchase. Now, what you can do, get started, download the free Upside app. Use my promo code LOCKED and get $5 or more cash back on your first purchase of $10 or more. Next, claim an offer for whatever you're buying on Upside. Check in at the business, pay as usual with a credit card or debit card, and get paid. In comparison to credit cards, rewards, or loyalty programs, you can earn 3 times more cash back with Upside. Upside users are earning more than $1 million every week. That's probably why they have a 4.8 star rating on the App Store. So download the free Upside app and use promo code LOCKED to get $5 or more cash back on your first purchase of $10 or more. Again, that's $5 or more cash back with your first purchase of $10 or more using promo code LOCKED. Now, if you've listened to our podcast, you know about LinkedIn. LinkedIn is one of our favorite partners on our show. Now, these days, every new potential hire can feel like a high-stakes wager for your small business. You want to be 100% certain that you have the access to the best qualified candidates available. That's why you have to check out LinkedIn Jobs. LinkedIn Jobs helps find the right people for your team faster and for free. So head on over to LinkedIn. Add your job in the purple hashtag hiring frame to your LinkedIn profile to spread the word that you're hiring. Simple tools like screening questions make it easy to focus on candidates with just the right skills and experience so you can quickly prioritize who you'd like to interview and hire. It's why small businesses rate LinkedIn Jobs #1 in delivering quality hires versus leading competitors. LinkedIn Jobs help you find the best qualified candidates you want to talk to faster. Post your job for free at linkedin.com/lockedoncollege. That's linkedin.com/lockedoncollege to post your job for free. Term and conditions apply. AJ Black back here with Mitch. We are talking about this weekend's game. The end of an era. The worst season for Boston College since 2015. Some people think it's worse than 2015 because of the expectations of this team, and I understand that. Other people, and I think myself included, will probably put it just slightly ahead of it because at least in 2000, this season, there was a good win in there. And I think that made it a little bit more tolerable. Mitch, I have a question for you. If you put this team against the 2015 team, who would win?
That is an excellent question because the 2015 defense was elite. We do have to remember that. And the BC offense already sucks, so they're not scoring any points.
Yep.
But the BC offense in 2015 was historically terrible. And BC's defense this year is up and down. We'll say below average. So, I mean, I think it ends up like the Wake Forest game from that year, from 2015. It's like a 0-3 slog with just tons of offensive mistakes. I think it's just I think it's a matter of which defense scores more points. Honestly, I think both defenses would outscore the offenses.
Yeah, and so this season comes to a merciful close, and as some folks have been saying, they want Jeff Hafley gone. I understand as a fan, excuse me, part of this fan base is just done with Jeff Hafley. They think this is a big issue. And, I think we saw a lot of issues again rear its ugly head on Saturday. Looking at this offense, though, do you think, Mitch, that this offense can take what does it need to do to take that next step next year, knowing that you're losing Zay Flowers, but maybe they hit the portal to get them some things to go right?
Yeah, I think you need to find a way to make this offensive line be at the bare minimum competent. This was actually, in terms of their pass blocking, one of their better games. I think Morehead was only pressured on about 25% of his dropbacks. Usually it's closer to 40%. So that was a nice improvement. They were able to run the ball a decent bit, which I thought they'd be able to do. But like I said, I wasn't super impressed by the Syracuse defense, and we've seen how terribly this offense performed against real defenses.
So wait a minute. Let me jump in for a second here. I forgot to add, Mitch, tell the folks who had the highest, I think it was the highest offensive grade for Boston College yesterday.
It was Jack Conley. It was Jack Conley's blocking. His pass blocking grade was an 86.0 in, let's see, where'd it go? In 46 pass blocking reps, he only allowed 1 pressure, no penalties. It was a hurry. So props where props are due. Jack Conley had an excellent game the last night. And His counterpart, Azrapilo, did not. He had 2 pressures and a holding penalty at left tackle. So Conley had a great game in what could be his final game. He might transfer out, but it's nice that he went out on a high note. I'll say that.
All right. So I got you sidetracked because I had to bring that up. But go ahead. Go on to.
Yeah, they just need to get this offensive line to a point where they're competent. And I think they have plenty of guys in the room. And we know Kevin Pine is probably leaving, and I don't really care because he hasn't been able to get on the field even this year until the final drive when the offensive line has been terrible. So that's fine. I think you need to hope. I mean, I'm not sure what's going to happen with Christian Mahogany. And they do have guys coming in. I think maybe you just kind of get the young guys, start giving them reps as the starters in training camp. That'd be Jude Bowery, Noah Clifford, even Otto Hess. It's a shame. Otto Hess was having a pretty decent game for the most part, especially in the run game, and then had a few really, really bad reps and had 2 penalties late in the game. So I had wanted to see him play above Jackson Ness for a little while, and towards the end, it really fell apart for him. So that was disappointing to see. But I mean, again, it's really all in the offensive line. And I think that's been this whole issue for this team the whole season. That's what I've been saying, is that those injuries have really just made it impossible for this offense to operate in any kind of efficient way. In terms of the other positions, I honestly feel pretty decent about Morehead coming back next year. I mean, he was essentially a freshman this year, getting his first starts on a pretty bad team. And there were good moments. There were also some pretty bad ones. So I think that they're going to stick with him. They have Peter Delaportis there as well, who can, you're redshirted him this year. You can kind of see what he has as the redshirt freshman next year. And I think you have those 2 guys compete. I'm not sure if Jacoby Robinson is going to come in the offseason or in the spring, but I'm not really sure going into the portal for a guy. And you're essentially saying we're bringing you in as competition, because I can't really think of a guy out there off the top of my head who's entering the portal besides, I mean, maybe Jeff Sims from Georgia Tech, but he's been injury prone, is not, the greatest thing ever either. So I think it's going to be tough for you to bring in a guy and say, hey, like, we're going to have you come in and compete with this guy. And I'm not sure Hafley is the kind of guy who wants to, Jerkovic was a little bit different situation because it was his first year, but I don't think he's the guy who wants to go out and say, hey, you're the transfer guy. We're promising you the job as long as you transfer here. So that's one thing. In terms of the other skill positions, I feel pretty decent running back, especially if Pat Garwo stays. Wide receivers pretty solid. They got a lot of guys there that they should be able to figure something out. Tight end is a little funky because you got George Stack is leaving. You're a little thin for depth there, I think. So maybe they keep going. They've really been hitting the portal hard for tight ends, as there just seems to be a lot of them hitting the transfer portal. So and they might be losing 1 or 2 as well this year. So it wouldn't shock me if they went out and got a guy there. I think next year, in terms of what you want the offense to be, I think they really want it to be, I mean, it's weird to say, but kind of like some of the Adazio offenses where it's we're really going to run the ball hard and we're going to build play action off that, because that's kind of how you want to build Morehead up. And that's where he's been pretty successful, I would say. He has good accuracy deep down the field. He makes some really nice deep balls. And there are times when he has really good pocket presence, but there are other times when he doesn't. And that's something that comes with experience. So I'm fine with riding with Morehead next year, but you really just have to surround him with a decent offensive line that can, make the run game. Again, it doesn't have to be like an AJ Dillon or Jonathan Hillman style run game where they're just reeling off these big gains, and it just has to be competent. You can rely on them to, and kind of how it was this game, where get 4 yards on first down, make it 2nd and 6, get another 4 yards, make it 3rd and 2, third and 1. That's really all you need. And you need them to, if they have one bad game in pass protection, fine, but you need to be them only averaging a pressure rate of 30, maybe 35%, not 40%. You got to get them just up to a basic level of competence. That's what I've been saying all year.
And before you go, Mitch, let's talk about Zay one last time. It's final game for Zay Flowers. This is the positive. And I think we're in the midst of all of this crap that we sat through this year. If you sit back and watch some of those plays Zay made, and I know he was on it was a bad team, but to watch him bust his butt, and I know Hafley mentioned it last night, and really into the last down to put full effort out there all the time, there's certain guys that leave this program and you root for. AJ Dillon was one. I loved watching him play, and I was so happy to see him get drafted and see him being successful. I think Zay is going to be my top, like the top guy that I will root for from Boston College that's currently in the NFL, because he exemplifies, and I said this earlier, like the guy that you want to, like, he exemplifies everything Boston College is about. And to have him go out with 2 touchdowns, I know it was a loss, but I think we're all going to miss watching him next year.
Yeah, absolutely. And I wrote my 3 stars. This game was kind of a microcosm for Zay Flowers' career at BC, where it's like, man, the rest of the team around him is really struggling, but he's doing a great job. And I thought it was great that I didn't like how they still had Morehead out there in the final draft because he was clearly injured, but I did like that they were kind of still getting the offense like, hey, hurry up. We got to get Zay a touchdown so we can get this record. And then they call this designer play for him to get like a quick screen behind a shield and get in the end zone to break that record. So that was really cool to see. And yeah, I mean, I couldn't agree more. I mean, he has all the career receiving records. He's, I think, without a question, the best wide receiver BC has ever produced. And I'm not sure he's absolutely in the conversation for top 10 players at BC ever. But especially if you include linemen, that's a pretty illustrious list. If you don't include linemen, I think he's in there. But I mean, he's regardless definitely in the conversation. And it is going to be disappointing not seeing him don the maroon and gold anymore.
All right, so we're going to wrap this up because I need to talk basketball, because there was a big basketball game on Sunday in Chestnut Hill. But Mitch, we'll have you back on to kind of do some we mentioned it on Friday's show, the autopsy of this season. We'll look at coaches and players, look at what happened, what didn't happen, and moving ahead. So we'll have you back on again soon. We'll talk about that, and I'll make sure folks listening to this podcast knows when it's coming. But in the meantime, where can folks find your work?
You can follow me at Mitchell T. Wolfe, WOLFE on Twitter. That's where we posted my 3 stars, or my 3 stars of the game will be coming along with my 3 stars of the season. And then we'll kind of, I don't know if I have the heart to do a full rewatch of this game after this whole season, but I'll try my best. And then, I'll kind of start digging into those more nuanced autopsies of certain aspects of the team, probably the offensive line, because that was obviously the biggest issue. But I'm also going to want to take a look at the defense to see, because they were able to do some good things at various points of the season. And so I want to see kind of what they can carry into next year so that they can keep performing well. But yeah, that's it.
All right. Thanks for being on with me today, Mitch, and we'll have you back on again soon. In our final segment, basketball improves to 5-2 with a big win over URI. We'll get into what happened there. Now, our partners at Nissan, they have worked out with us to create a new segment across the Locked On College network titled Thrilling Moments, where we highlight the most exciting play from the Boston College weekend game or throughout the history of our alma mater. This weekend's thrilling moment from the Boston College Eagles is this weekend's game from Zay Flowers. While there wasn't much else to talk about in a game that was filled with depressing moments, Zay Flowers caught 2 touchdown passes and passed multiple school records, including most touchdown receptions in a season and most touchdown receptions in a career, passing Kelvin Martin. Now, many of us know Zay Flowers from watching and rooting him on. This was a big time moment for him. Now, this thrilling moment segment goes way beyond traditional spots and dots to organically tie Nissan. The Nissan segment has been inspired by the thrilling new designs featured across Nissan's new lineup of vehicles. Pursue what thrills you in the all-new Frontier, Armada, or Pathfinder today. Available now at nissanusa.com. All right, Locked On BC here, and we're going to get into basketball now, because basketball had a heck of a game on Sunday to beat the URI Rams at home 53-49. Not a very offensive-minded game for the BC Eagles, but hey, a win's a win. And just like we've seen this year, we have now a new player to really root for that I think is really fun in Devin McLaughlin. Devin McLaughlin hit the go-ahead layup and iced the game with a pair of free throws in the last couple minutes of the game. He finished with 11.7 rebounds off of the bench. This is a guy that no one had much expectations for heading into this season. He goes in there, he makes some big shots. Now, BC had lost 3 in a row to the URI Rams, URI is not the same URI team that we had a couple years ago under David Cox. Now they have Archie Miller, and they're blowing up their roster, so they haven't had a chance to build the depth that they need to play well. But hey, just like every game BC has played, a win is a win. Now, that being said, still have some major concerns about this team. You want the wins, but this team right now really, really lacks a consistent scorer, a go-to guy that you can rely on for buckets. Now, you don't need to have a Kai Bowman or a Jerome Robinson to be a good team, but you need someone to reliably score for you. Okay? Now, in a game like this, you scored 53 points. That's bad. I mean, URI is not a very good team this year. So, yes, they won, but I left this game feeling like there's still issues with this offense. There's still issues with the shooting. I mean, Mason Madsen at one point was 0 for 5 from three-point range. He's supposed to be your spot scorer, the guy that hits your three-pointers for you. He wasn't hitting. Jaden Zachary was your go-to guy. He had 16 points, but I still worry about that. Now, that being said, the BC depth chart is still hammered. DeMar Langford played, but he didn't look like himself. He's still, whatever he got right around that time they went to the Virgin Islands, it still feels like he's not 100%. Clearly not himself. You still also are missing Quinten Post, who's still on the bench with a boot. Prince Aligbe, who's on the bench, and DJ Hand on the bench with an injury. We don't know what that is. I think it was a foot injury with Aligbe or an ankle injury. And Donald Hand, we don't know what's going on there. Now, when you are looking at these injuries, folks are like, AJ, what is going on? Unfortunately, Boston College Athletics has figured out a way to not tell the media or fans anything about anyone. First, you had football. Jeff Hafley is, as we've said on this podcast, he's masterful at masking whatever the hell's going on. You hear that his term that we love to use here is he's hopeful. He's hopeful. That he's hopeful, and the guy's out for the rest of the year. He's hopeful. Hey, he's back. Hopeful and injury reports. Like, folks are asking me to ask at press conferences about injuries. He never tells you anything. Now you go to basketball, and Earl Grant has his own term that means absolutely nothing, which is their day-to-day. Quinten Post has been day-to-day for 3 weeks now. He's not day-to-day. He's out. And we don't know how long he's going to be out because he won't tell us. So I don't know. I don't know how long. I mean, I can't force the coaching staff to tell us, right? They're going to tell us day-to-day. So, you have Post and Aligbe who've been in boots. It sounds like they're going to both be back at, I think Aligbe, I've heard, is going to be back sooner than Post. We have no clue what's going on with Donald Hand. John Rothstein, he's like the guy that talks to the coaching staff and gets some of these scoops. He's been tweeting out that DJ Hand has been out with undisclosed. So that tells you absolutely nothing. We don't know what the heck is going on with DJ Hand. So we're heading into, when you're playing Tarleton State, I know they lost to Tarleton State, but that doesn't matter. But URI, Cornell, those types of teams that are kind of in the midst, that's fine to get these non-responses. But now we're heading into some tougher games. You have Nebraska, which has a Ken Palm rating that's 50-50 that BC will win this game. That's fine. It's going to be tough, but you could probably handle that. But look ahead. You got Duke coming up. And then you start the ACC schedule in a couple weeks. You need to get these guys back. You need to get a sense of if they're going to be back. Because no offense to guys like CJ Penna, but if it's CJ Penna or Quinten Post, you know who's going to be the higher it's the higher the higher odds are going to be with Quinten Post, right? So that I think you need to figure that. Yes, Mark Falzone is saying it's not in our competitive interest to disclose all injury information. All teams do this. Yes, all teams do it, but some teams give more than what we've seen. Like Mark, I've been around enough press conferences and follow enough. I have enough friends that cover other teams from different sites that I've been connected with. Yeah, they don't always tell you, but you get a sense. Like you get a sense that Quinten Post is going to be back in the next 2 to 3 weeks, or that he's out for 2 months. I honestly, I couldn't tell you any of this. Like, I think, yeah, it's not in their best interest, but we're still kind of just left in the lurch. And I think that's the big point right here. So I think basketball, a win's a win. And I keep going back to this, like you just survive and move on with this team right now. Win and move on. But I'm telling you, couple games away from Duke, playing like they've been playing against Duke, they're going to be in a lot of trouble. They're going to be in a lot of trouble when they hit that ACC part of their schedule. And luckily right now, there's a lot of other ACC schools that are struggling. I mean, UNC was number 1 in the country. They have I think they have 2 losses in the last couple of weeks. But I mean, they're still very good. But Louisville is a complete disaster right now. They are a train wreck. I mean, Kenny Payne may not even make it to his second year. You have them. I think they have BC on their schedule twice. Florida State struggling. You've got a lot of teams that are right for the picking, but health is going to be the big thing for BC because their defense is showing it up. But the guys that are out right now could really, really give BC that boost on the offensive side where they've been struggling. This is AJ back. We'll be back again tomorrow. I want to talk about the transfer portal. I'm sure there's going to be more news coming up, but there was one offensive lineman that already entered. I'm going to talk about him. I'll talk a little bit more about the season. I'll probably have Mitch back on either today or tomorrow or Wednesday. We'll have him on. We're going to have a lot to talk about this week. If you have not done so already, please subscribe to our YouTube page and become a subscriber. It takes 10 seconds. It doesn't cost you a thing. Thank you all for listening. We'll see you again soon. Take care.